everyone. This is ARIRANG News. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. The top stories we're following for you at this hour. The newly elected chairman of Korea's main opposition party, Moon Jae-in, pays his respects to former presidents, including Seung-man and Chung-hee. Moon calls for the eradication of sub-party factions. Now, following North Korea's firing of short-range missiles into the East Sea on Sunday, Washington urges Pyongyang to halt all provocations. This as senior foreign ministry officials from South Korea and the U.S. meet today in Seoul. And the leaders of Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France agreed to meet in Belarus this week. They will talk about ways to end the fighting between rebels and Russia-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine. Now, today we begin with the newly elected leader of Korea's main opposition party, Moon Jae-in. He says he will start an all-out war with the current Park Geun-hye administration if it continues to worsen the economic conditions for ordinary citizens. For the outlook of how things are expected to pan out, here's our National Assembly correspondent, Park Ji-won.
The new leader of Korea's main opposition party, Moon Jae-in, paid his respects to three former presidents, Seung-man, Park Chung-hee, and Kim Dae-jung on Monday, the day after his election.
I'm paying my respects to signify my commitment to ending the discord and bringing about national unity.
The new chairman of the New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party also had some words of advice for the Park Geun-hye administration, urging it to choose the path of reconciliation and integration.
There are many things the Park administration has done that run counter to national unity. For example, its extreme bias and discrimination in her personnel appointments.
Moon's election as the new opposition party leader is expected to deepen the confrontation between the nation's ruling and opposition camps. In his acceptance speech on Sunday, the former presidential candidate, who was once the former chief of staff for the late President Roh Moo-hyun, vowed to be a strong voice of opposition against the incumbent administration.
I will wage an all-out war against the Park Geun-hye administration if it continues to ruin democracy and the livelihoods of the people.
Ruling Saenuri Party Chairman Kim Moo-sung stressed political coexistence over confrontation in his meeting with the new opposition leader on Monday.
Politics is all about negotiation and compromise, and what people want is win-win politics for both political camps.
The new opposition party leader now faces the huge task of revamping a party plagued with deep-rooted factional strife before the by-elections this year and the general election next year. All eyes will now be on Moon as he takes his first steps. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
The nation's top office says President Park Geun-hye is planning to carry out a small cabinet reshuffle shortly after Prime Minister nominee Lee Won-gu is appointed. But it might be a while before the shakeup takes place, with Lee accused of trying to manipulate the media. For this report, here's ARIRANG News' presidential office correspondent, Choi Yoo-sun.
President Park's decision to complete reshuffles after her prime minister nominee is approved by parliament shows she plans to take into account both the public and ruling party sentiments. According to the presidential office spokesperson, the shakeups now expected after the parliament votes on the prime minister nominee on Thursday will be limited. While Yoo Gi-jun, a ruling party lawmaker close to the president, is a widely talked about candidate for Oceans Minister, the Unification Minister is also speculated to be replaced. But the future of Prime Minister nominee Lee Won-gu is uncertain after local media reported an audio file of the nominee claiming to have blocked media coverage questioning his eligibility as Prime Minister.
We had not expected this. Since the appointment will be about the nominee's qualifications, we need to come together to overcome this hurdle.
Lee also faces a series of allegations, including real estate speculation and his son having sought military service exemption by having a knee surgery.
The nominee has failed to clarify any of the allegations made against him, and now we've seen his crooked way of thinking that he can control the media. The nominee is not qualified to be appointed prime minister.
If Rhee fails to win parliamentary approval, it will deal a heavy blow to the Park administration as it seeks to focus on revitalizing the economy entering its third year. And the presidential office's relationship with the ruling party, which has called for reforms in the administration, will also depend on whether the presidential chief of staff will be dismissed and who will be named as the president's new political advisors. Choi Yu-sun, ARIRANG News.
Now, meanwhile, at Monday's meeting with her senior secretaries, President Park said the government should prioritize bolstering the country's welfare system while minimizing the financial burden on the people. This was in response to criticism at the National Assembly over the president's election pledge to expand welfare without a tax hike. Referring to her economic revitalization plan, President Park urged officials to first think about whether they've done everything to breathe life into the economy, which in turn would generate more tax revenue. Now stressing that the government needs cooperation from Parliament and the political parties on that front, the president added that the government is open to taking part in discussions with the National Assembly so long as the focus is on the interests of the people. The United States is urging North Korea to halt all threats and take steps to denuclearize. This after Pyongyang fired 5 short-range missiles into the East Sea on Sunday in a move to protest against upcoming joint military exercises between the U.S. and South Korea. Seoul's defense ministry says the missiles were fired off Pyongyang's east coast and flew about 200 kilometers before hitting the sea. The U.S. State Department emphasized that the joint military exercises coming up in March have been ongoing for the past 40 years and that they are transparent and defensive in nature. And senior diplomats from South Korea and the U.S. have been holding talks in Seoul on this Monday. Seoul's foreign ministry says U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken and South Korea's first Vice Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yong exchanged views on a wide range of issues, including North Korea. The talks come less than 24 hours after North Korea fired short-range missiles off its east coast, heightening tensions on the Korean Peninsula. This is the third visit to Seoul by a high-level U.S. diplomat in recent weeks. Now, Blinken heads to Beijing on Tuesday and plans to make a stop in Tokyo before returning to Washington. One of the popular shopping methods enjoyed by many Koreans these days is TV home shopping. Now, with a 2-decade history, the channels offer great deals and are also essential sales outlet for small and mid-sized firms. Our Song Ji-sun takes a look into the industry on this week's Industry Insight.
This thread and textile company, founded half a century ago, was once facing a crisis. It was battling cheap Chinese imports while struggling to find a new retail outlet. But now it has transformed itself into a fast fashion producer, and its products are sold on 2 major TV home shopping channels. Its television sales are more than 10 times what it's raised through offline sales.
We are a traditional manufacturing company and couldn't afford all the marketing expenses needed to advertise our products. So we ventured onto home shopping channels that helped us gain wide recognition in a short period of time.
Many small and mid-sized companies like this have turned their products into household names through home shopping channels. There have been many changes in the past 2 decades since home shopping channels first launched in Korea. The channels now offer practically everything under the sun, and the format has also evolved over time.
Korea's home shopping industry has created a unique business model. Unlike the kinds of short infomercials you might see in other countries, Korean home shopping channels manage to keep the viewers watch the shows for a full hour by making them entertaining.
It's not just celebrities advertising the products, but ordinary people testing them with industry professionals. Korea's home shopping format of featuring a single product has also captured viewers overseas, especially in Asia. 4 Korean channels, mostly run by large conglomerates, have entered 10 countries over the past decade. And this leading channel is now seeking to expand its sales overseas to become the world's #1 home shopping distributor by 2020.
We've reduced the risks by entering the market through joint ventures, and we established an international outsourcing company to customize our product line. We also focus on introducing Korean products by smaller companies because it is harder for them to enter foreign markets than larger companies can.
In fact, over 70% of Korean products sold overseas through the channel are by small and mid-sized companies, creating a new Korean wave of products. Government regulators say home shopping companies' move into foreign markets could also help improve market issues here at home, like the high commission taken by the stations.
Expanding their overseas business could improve their profits as domestic market growth is slowing down, whereas foreign markets are just booming. This could also make room for domestic home shopping channels to lower their commission rates, which stand as an entry barrier for small and mid-sized companies.
The government will also launch a new public home shopping channel in the first half that will be solely dedicated to handling the products of small and mid-sized companies in its bid to help startups use home shopping channels to introduce their products. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
In the year 2012, where Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Falling global oil prices are having a mixed impact on Korea's economy, but one group that's hurting is the construction firms targeting overseas clients. As the majority of their business is in the Middle East, where many of the world's major oil-producing countries are, the negative impact is likely not over yet. Shin Se-min tells us more.
Korean overseas construction industry is hurting after seeing its earnings fall for the first time in 4 years. The Bank of Korea says the current account surplus from overseas construction dropped to $17 billion last year, down 16% from the previous year. It's the first drop since 2010, when earnings fell nearly 18%. The balance of overseas contracts includes the payments that Korean builders have received for the progress made on existing orders from overseas. The decline in revenue is largely attributed to falling global oil prices, as a large portion of Korean construction firms are located in oil-producing countries in the Middle East. Experts say the oil price drop will be a troubling factor for many Korean builders looking for overseas deals, as it is hard to predict how long the current low oil prices will last. Korea's overseas construction industry has seen steady growth since 2010, from nearly $12 billion that year to $20 billion in 2013. The data says that the number had been rising by a yearly average of 20%. Korean builders, however, secured $66 billion in overseas construction projects last year alone, the second highest total in history, but still short of the government's initial target of $70 billion. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Now, we reported last week about a group of American historians protesting against Japan's efforts to water down historical facts. Well, the U.S. government says it supports the scholars, saying Tokyo needs to change the way it approaches its past wartime atrocities. For more, here's our Connie Kim.
The U.S. government has lent its support to a group of U.S. historians who have been protesting Japan's attempts to whitewash history. The State Department said Sunday that it strongly supports academic freedom as part of the foundation of a democratic society. It urged Tokyo to approach its historical wrongdoing through healing and reconciliation. Now, this comes after a group of 19 historians issued a joint statement expressing opposition to Japan's efforts to pressure U.S. publisher McGraw-Hill to change how the sexual slavery issue is described in one of its textbooks. Historians estimate that 200,000 women, mostly Koreans, were forced by the Japanese army to serve in military brothels during World War II. A collective statement by history scholars is seen as unusual, and it's expected to put pressure on Abe during his upcoming trip to the U.S. this spring. The trip will be Abe's first U.S. visit in about 2 years, and experts say he'll try to use it as an opportunity to deepen Tokyo's alliance with Washington. Abe also wants to push ahead with efforts to revise the country's pacifist constitution and give the country the right to collective self-defense, in other words, to allow the Japanese military to aid allies under attack. Experts say another item on Abe's to-do list is to complete the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal that would strengthen Japan-U.S. economic cooperation in the region. But with U.S. pushing to restore trilateral security cooperation between South Korea and Japan, analysts say it seems that Tokyo will be left with no choice but to address its past wrongdoing in order to move forward with what Japan has on its agenda. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And about that agenda, reports say Abe is giving shape to how his party plans to revise the constitution. Items subject to amendment will be chosen during the ongoing regular session with the goal that the final bill pass the parliament by fall next year. Jaein has more details.
The Japanese government is moving forward with its efforts to revise the country's pacifist constitution. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party's headquarters for the promotion of revision to the constitution is expected to work on its selection of items on the agenda for constitutional amendment during the current regular session of the Diet. They plan to finalize it no later than this fall. The party then plans to submit the constitutional amendment bill at the regular session in January next year. And after the House of Councillors election next summer, they plan to put the bill in motion during the extraordinary session in fall 2016. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says the party will devote all of its energy to gain control of 2/3 of the seats in the House of Councillors election so it can swiftly move from a vote in the Diet to a public referendum in 2 years' time.
We must win the majority of the votes at the public referendum. This is our top priority.
Abe's government also plans to include other items on the agenda for constitutional amendment that are closely related to the people's lives, such as environmental rights and fiscal health, to win more public support. But a tough road lies ahead for Abe and his party, as its coalition partner, New Komeito, is deeply against the move. And according to a recent opinion poll, more than 2/3 of the Japanese public are skeptical about the planned changes. Jaein, ARIRANG News.
In other international news, European leaders have reached a date for talks on resolving the Ukraine crisis diplomatically. The talks involving the 4 leaders of Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France will take place in Minsk on Wednesday. Kim En-bin has this report.
A diplomatic push over the weekend to find a peaceful resolution to the Ukraine crisis has produced a summit date. The leaders of Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France have agreed to meet in Minsk on Wednesday to discuss a potential peace plan and amid ongoing fighting in eastern Ukraine. The 4 leaders held a telephone conference call on Sunday, 2 days after German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President François Hollande traveled to Moscow for face-to-face talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Ukraine President Petro Poroshenko said he was hopeful the meeting would lead to a swift and unconditional ceasefire in eastern Ukraine, where pro-Russian separatists found success in seizing new territory in recent weeks. But President Putin said the talks would only happen if an agreement is reached on a number of points, pointing out that Kiev must halt its military operation in eastern Ukraine and stop putting pressure on rebel-held regions. This as heavy fighting continues in a strategic town in eastern Ukraine. Some 170 civilians escaped to Ukraine's capital, Kiev, on Sunday, while hundreds of vehicles were seen crossing into the Russian border. More than 5,300 people have been killed since fighting between Ukrainian forces and Russia-backed rebels began in April of last year. Kim En-bin, ARIRANG News.
Jordan's Air Force chief has promised to wipe the Islamic State, quote, off the face of the earth as he pledged the 56 airstrikes his forces launched against the group recently are just the beginning. General Mansour al-Jabbour said IS weapon depot, training centers, and military barracks were targeted in this latest barrage, and that he estimates the extremist group has lost 7,000 fighters and 20% of its military capabilities since the start of the coalition airstrikes. He said Jordan was responsible for nearly 20% of the sorties to date. Now, this as a squadron of F-16 fighter jets from the UAE arrived in Jordan with reported plans to coordinate airstrikes against IS with Jordan. it's an exciting time for fans of animation, whether you're a kid or just young at heart. The next couple of weeks bring several new films to Korea. Our Im Yoon-hee joins us today to tell us what's ahead. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. Right, so quite a few big animations heading to the Korean box offices, and now with animations these days, just so much potential, so much to wait for, so much expectation. So of those movies, there's one production that's supposed to steal spotlights. So for all you Frozen fans out there, here's one that's thawing just in time for spring. Take a look.
If you still haven't gotten on the Frozen train, here's another chance. Disney has recently announced a sequel to the hit movie in the form of a short film, set to debut along with Disney's new non-animated film, Cinderella. Frozen Fever follows Queen Elsa, who's planning a birthday party for her sister Anna. But along the way, the Queen gets a cold, causing her powers to go out of control. Korea fell victim to the Frozen flurry after its release in Korea early last year, and the trend is likely to continue with the release of the sequel. But it's hard to ignore this movie, as it's seen on shelves in all shapes and sizes everywhere. Another animated film with high expectations, the lovable SpongeBob SquarePants has left Bikini Bottom, and the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water. The animated action-adventure comedy premieres on the 18th in Korea. Meanwhile, the Japanese animation character Doraemon appears in a feature film that opens this week. The world of animation is always expanding, shedding new light on old stories, like the new animated musical, Legends of Oz, Dorothy's Return, a familiar tale told through new eyes. Another animated film to check out is Yellow Bird, which follows a young bird and his new adventures in life.
I've seen many people who are huge fans of Doraemon.
A very cute character.
It's not the first time that the film is released.
Right, so but with this particular movie, it seems to be very special. It actually last year brought in over $86 million of sales worldwide, especially in Japan. It was a hit. It was one of the top-selling movies last year. So we'll have to wait and see how it does in Korea and see how the Korean fans fare.
Right, and some people are still can't get over the Frozen factor, and it's still going very strong here in Korea.
Right, so people are expecting this next, I guess, short clip to be pretty popular. Some might even go to see the short clip Frozen instead of the movie Cinderella. That might be a side dish. But with this particular song, the original team, or this particular production, the original team is behind this, and they actually have a new song that they are working on right now that they're very excited for. So forget Let It Go, all those other songs, maybe let those go and
it is
make
impossible
room for
to forget Let It Go,
another Frozen fiasco, we'll see.
Okay, all right. We'll see if they will have a bigger hit, make a bigger hit for the movie or the song Let It Go. We'll see. All right, thank you very much, Yoon-hee, for bringing us this story today.
You're very welcome.
Hello everyone, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Cold wave advisories have been lifted, and by comparing the morning to the current temperatures, they are slowly on the rise and expect them to rise more further into the day, and by tomorrow it will recover back to its seasonal average. Now with the cold air front, we are seeing clear skies nationwide, although we are expecting some clouds to come in with the snow in the central region. Now, besides that, the cool, strong wind will continue throughout the day, along with the dry weather conditions, especially on the east side of the peninsula, with the highs ranging similar to yesterday between -1 and 3 degrees nationwide. Now, let's take a look at the readings for today. Seoul will peak up to 2 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will reach up to 1 and 2 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 3, Dokdo hits down to -1, while Mankungang is sunny at -9 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And that's all we have on ARIRANG News on this edition. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. I will be back with all of that and more at 4 p.m. Korea time.